You're listening to Polymatic.media, episode 24 for September 17th, 2017. Welcome to the Polymaticast. Hey, Alan. How you doing?
Hey, John. How's it going? So you did the intro.
Yeah, for a change.
Yeah, that's fine. It's cool.
Changing things up. So, we had a bit of trouble coming up with a topic for today, right? So we came up with the idea for this. We were both fans of sci-fi, and the landscape of sci-fi is kind of changing. We've got a lot of new series coming in, and a lot of old series dying. So yeah, I think that's a good topic for today. But what's been up with you?
Good question. I've progressed a lot in Moonbase, and it's sort of like one of those endless just play the game. I think I've done most of the things. I've mastered most of the things. Sort of just an open world, endless kind of thing. So me surviving is not a problem. So that's been going on, but I think I've got my 2 or 3 weeks into getting it through my system, and I like it. It's more of an occasional thing now.
How much did you spend on the game?
$3.
$3. So you got your $3 worth, right?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. But I know because I'm subscribed to the Trello board with the developer Steve Ford. I know there's other new stuff coming, so that's cool. And then that will renew some interest, and I'll play with it, and I'll check that stuff out, and then I'll go back into the shadows of not worrying about it for a while. So that's been going on.
Did you end up checking out Don't Starve?
I didn't. I looked at it on Steam, and I realized I won't like that. I won't want to spend a lot of time with that look and feel.
It's basically the same game. It's basically the same game.
Well, I don't know. I just was like, yeah, I don't think I would get into that. So I, the other thing is I got a bunch of games that I haven't really completed or played through. There's a bunch of like tower defense like games that I still just, I don't know. Like you gotta grind on them a little bit. Gemcraft, right? I've unlocked a lot of stuff, but there's just ones like I can't. You got to keep replaying it until you figure out whatever the strategy is for that board. So I don't know. Those are the kinds of things that I got that I can still play. I don't really have a need to spend any money on like a big AAA game kind of thing. So, but other than that, what I intend to do today when the rest of the gear shows up is I'm going to redo the networking in the house.
You got some new networking gear coming in?
Yeah, I finally bought the Google Wi-Fi.
Oh, okay.
But see, now at this point I have 3 networks, and one of them, it's not that it's a bad device, it's just that it's not as, I think signal strength is not as thorough throughout the height of the house. So I just want to replace it. I went with a Linksys, high-end Linksys, maybe a couple years ago, and if we're being high-end, it's not so good. It's not as great as it was, promised to be. So I want something where I can attach, like I like the fact that Google Wi-Fi had some Ethernet ports on it, right?
Yeah.
So you can, does sort of internal, I don't know if you really would call it. It's really just an internal mesh. It's not, external. And so I bought the 3-pack, so I was going to put one on each floor, right? Basement, first floor, second floor.
With Ethernet?
Hmm?
Are you connecting them with Ethernet?
Well, you got to start with Ethernet, right? So where the cable modem and all that stuff comes in, or the fiber box comes in.
Are they interconnected with their own network?
Yeah, that's correct.
Cables?
Yep. Mm-hmm. They're interconnected on their own spectrum.
Oh, no, I meant like with actual cables.
Oh, no. They're interconnected wirelessly through a different technology. So yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to redo it. I plan to do it today, but I realized, before I do that, this thing only has 2 ports on the back of it. I need more than 2 because I'm going to use one, and I'm going to use another one to stick it to something so I can plug other things into it. So, from that perspective, what I need to do is I bought a like an 8-port switch. So
Mm.
I'm waiting for that guy. When that guy shows up, I will begin my headache. Hopefully, it won't be a headache.
Putting it back together.
Yeah, well, I think what it's going to be is I'm going to leave all the networks up, and then I'm going to start moving the, certain gear over. A lot of the stuff that's on that new network was, a lot of the Internet of Things, like, the Echoes or set-top boxes and junk like that. So once I move all that gear over and everything seems happy, I should be able to mostly do that from my phone once I get up, the network's all set up. And then I'll check and test, signal strength throughout the house.
Did you see the South Park episode recently with the Echo, Alexa, whatever, activate everything, Siri?
I haven't.
No? Okay, so they released an episode where Cartman is really addicted to letting Alexa, okay Google, Siri, do everything. So it just keeps repeating itself and stuff. It was basically like that one video that we shared a while back.
Mm-hmm.
So that was actually pretty funny. When we were talking about your home improvement type things, that kind of reminded me of that. I watched it today because it was on their website. You can actually watch the episodes here right now. That's actually quite good.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyhow, I'm gonna hopefully work on that today and not wimp out for the light of doing other things.
Watch some Netflix.
Well, it's not even that. It's a little things like I have the Internet of Things on one network, but then because there's multiple networks, the Fire TV or the Chromecast might flip over to the other network, and I just need to consolidate it into one place.
Yeah.
And the only reason I have more than one is because I was starting to hit upper limitations based on the security mechanisms I was using. So I was hitting upper limit of devices. And you don't think about it, but you add like an Echo here, an Echo there, and another one over here, and then some Internet of Things stuff. And then all of a sudden you have 25 devices that aren't computers. And so that happens pretty quickly. And so I was running into a limit. And my method for being ultra secure was running in the way of that being easy. So I want something that's a little bit more modern, more dynamic, and is supposed to apparently promise, not even just promise, but it works very well for a larger deployment, like a larger footprint, right? In my case, it's not so much that I have a large footprint as much as I have height. Right, that I want to cover.
What's the distance on that thing that you can reach with?
I don't know.
Between them, right?
So one of them is supposed to cover 1,500 square feet on its own, and 3 of them is supposed to cover, obviously, times 3, 4,500 square feet. That's what I heard early on. What's the truth of it? Do I only want to load up one? Probably not. I might only do 2. I'm not really sure. I know that upstairs I want to connect the Fire TV directly to it. And I probably want to take the Philips Hue bridge and move that upstairs so that when I want to add a new thing, I don't have to go down to the basement, go through like the isolated area of the basement and hit a button and then walk back upstairs and reconnect all the lights.
No, also the Philips Hue doesn't have that big a range.
Actually, it works all the way upstairs just fine.
Yeah, if you get to the first thing, then they work as like a mesh network. But if you can't reach the first one, then you have a problem.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, it's never been a problem. The only kind of thing that sucks about it is that the Philips Hue bridge has an Ethernet port on it, and that's the only way it connects. So upstairs, I only really need those 2 ports, right, for the Fire TV and for that, and then I'm done. I don't have any more ports on that, the access point. So to the point of it, I'm going to be working on that today. It's a long rant, sorry, but with any luck, it's become a pain point, and I need to improve it. So, just waiting on the technology to arrive so that I can.
I've been playing with dissolvable filaments on my 3D printer.
Yeah.
I wanted to make. One of my colleagues had a birthday last week, and he has like a World of Warcraft character he really likes. So I thought maybe I'd just print one of his characters. So I got the model out of World of Warcraft, and eventually I was able to get it ready for a print. So I tried to print it, and on its own didn't print well because just it's not possible to print it by itself. And then eventually I thought, well, maybe I could try some dissolvable filaments. It's basically PVA glue, but in in a filament form. And that kind of was a miserable failure because it doesn't really stick that well to other filaments, apparently. So I tried that, didn't work. I ended up abandoning the whole project. So that was a bit of a letdown. Okay, so that was an interesting project to work on, but it didn't go that well. I don't know if it's the filament, but it just disconnects from the other parts, and then the other parts go on a little hike through your 3D printer, stuck to the 3D printer head, molten into like a glob of plastic, and and then you hear rattling noises from your printer, and that's never good. Ever good.
I guess it's obvious that with 3D printing, it's a lot of trial and error. It's not really maybe so much trial, it's try and error.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, if I do something like this, like one of those figurines, it's better to do it on a DLP printer or something like that, like one of those resin printers, and then chop them up into bits and then glue them together. That's probably the best idea.
Got you.
And chopping them up would have also helped. It just takes a very long time to do and then print them. And the figures that came out of it are not really that high resolution. So there's lots of the way that WoW renders their characters now is it has a lot of filters on it, so that makes it look really rounded and really good. But as soon as you try to get the model out of it, it looks really blocky.
Gaia.
Right.
Gaia.
So there's not any of the textures are on it. So yeah, that's never gonna work.
I would figure you have to tween the model a little bit to get it the way you expect it to be.
No. Even if you look at the model when you zoom in really good, there's no texture on it, so it's just really flat. I think that's I think it's because of the filters they put on it that it looks good in the game. And I think that's about it. But so I'm gonna try that again, but with like chopping up the figure and then still using the dissolvable filaments, because if I can print a shorter print, now my prints were almost 33 hours to do it, right?
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. So about halfway through it, which is still a lot of time, it fell off, right? And I did one that was okay. But I had a problem where the filament was going through the figure. So since you try to dissolve the filament, you're left with a figure with lots of holes in it. Yeah, that's kind of a waste of time and money.
Yeah. Oh, you got to be really patient to find out that it's a mess.
Especially since the rolls are like $40 for 500 grams of filament. $40, 40 euros, right? It's not even dollars; it's euros.
How many grams did you go through for all that stuff?
I think I went through about half the roll.
Wow. Okay.
Well, it's support material, right? But
yeah.
The support materials is more expensive than the actual material you're printing with.
Well, I guess you get to try to figure it out. I mean, that's what the end result is. Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to design some of my own figures. So I think it's a good trial run for this. I can try and do that later. And I'm also designing some game buildings for tabletop gaming with some other people. So that's an interesting project I'm working on. But that's also probably going to use some dissolvable filaments, and then I'm going to cast them and do all sorts of makery stuff. Now, in the meantime, I was actually watching the second season of The Expanse, so that was good.
Oh yeah,
I really like that. It was on Netflix this last week, I think.
Oh really? Okay.
Yeah.
I bought it directly through Amazon, so that's how I was watching it. It would get released, and then I would watch it. And even though, because like I said, I kind of cut the cord, but in terms of getting content, I didn't. I have most of the things where I can watch it, one way or another. So.
Well, I really like that sci-fi is actually making science fiction again. That's a good
Yes.
one.
Yes and no. And I know we're leading into our topic, but I wanted to point one thing out before we forgot. So, I talked about that I got the F4, right? That piece of hardware.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, since then, I've had time with it. It's a really good piece of equipment. More importantly, I figured out how to turn it into a audio interface. It is definitely an ASIO audio interface. You just download some drivers, and you can connect it with Audition, and you can get all 6 tracks separated out as an audio interface card. So typically those things, even if you go on the cheap end, cost about $300, and then a good recorder will cost you about $350 to $400. A good meaning like consumer, like field recorder. So with that said, it's totally worth its price. It's totally, made its, I don't know, it's totally worth its value. That I can tell you right now. So, yeah. But going back to sci-fi though, so we were talking about The Expanse, right? So you've seen that.
Yeah.
What else is? I guess there's a lot of stuff, at least here in America. They're doing a lot of things, right?
Yeah, there's a new Star Trek coming out next week.
There is,
and they're releasing it on Netflix. Yay!
So that I have to figure that out if that's the truth for me. For you, it's probably true. For me, I don't know that.
Yeah, they're not releasing it on Netflix in the U.S.
They're not. So that means that I have to probably sign up for the all access. And I was ready to do it to check it out, but then I know I'm going to go through and I'll probably end up canceling it again because I have a feeling I just don't. My issue is more of a direct concern about CBS, not necessarily about a thing I haven't seen yet.
Mm-hmm.
So the thought did occur to me is, and actually someone else said this on Facebook, and their comment was about the Orville, and the comment was something like, "Is the Orville perfect? No. Did I like it? Yes. Do I want to see where it's going to go? Yes. Sad thing, it's the best Star Trek we have in the last decade." And that's so true. That's so true. So I don't know if this new one is going to add any value.
Well, it's apparently going to be darker than ever. Right. So we'll see. I just like that there's actual new sci-fi coming out. It's been since Battlestar Galactica basically is nothing really new. And now there's The Expanse. There's new Star Trek coming out.
Mm-hmm.
There is all sorts of other comic book stories coming out. I don't really count them. Well, some of them kind of sci-fi, sort of.
So, do you want to put some boundaries on what we consider sci-fi? Because I don't I never considered vampires, werewolves, and crap like that
That's
sci-fi.
fantasy.
That is sci-fantasy. That's always how I quantify
it has nothing to do with sci. It's more like
it's just fantasy.
Call that? Yeah, it's just fantasy. Yeah.
And so I think that area of okay, maybe science fantasy is more like Fifth Element. Right, it's sort of sci-fi like, but then it's got lots of fantasy elements in it, though not really werewolves running around. But you get all that stuff, that vampire and zombie thing, and most people call that sci-fi. They put that under sci-fi / horror, and it's not. Yeah. I mean, it's fiction. That's true.
When you look at sci-fi, you get stuff like the new Discovery, the Orville. Even though it's just basically
Galaxy Quest,
Westworld, Doctor Who. I think that's kind of sci-fi.
Yeah, I guess so.
It leans more towards fantasy, but
right
because it's got usually goes back in time. Mm-hmm. The 100, that's one of them.
Yeah.
Black Mirror.
Okay.
The Expanse.
Mm-hmm.
The Dark Matter. Yeah.
Dark Matter, which sci-fi canceled, which I'm a little mad about. Was it perfect? No. Was it really sci-fi? Yeah, I think that's probably the most, with the exception of something like The Expanse, I think that has been, this year alone, at least one of the more sci-fi things. Um,
Yeah. But
Maybe that's not really true about Dark Matter. It's a ship in the bottle episode. Very rarely do they go outside of the ship or outside of a building, right? They barely do any outside stuff. They're mostly in space, in a ship, on a space station, inside a base on in the ground in the middle of a planet. Like, it's a ship in the bottle kind of thing, like Star Trek always did, which makes good for cheap production. It doesn't hurt the same level of thinking they did for like Stargate, except Stargate has lots of external,
yeah.
shots built into their design. So it feels very much like sci-fi, but they live in a science fiction world. That's true. But the focus of their content and stuff isn't like wrapped around being them in the future.
Yeah.
It's wrapped around the context and the premise of what's going on. So maybe that's the only kind of leading thought where maybe it's a little less science fiction, but it feels science fiction, right? These characters live in in that future, in that thing that's heavily rooted in science. So I don't know. Maybe that's my boundary. Maybe that's my explanation of what I think sci-fi should feel or look like, versus like Twilight movies.
Glittery vampires, man. Glittery vampires.
Yeah.
So, did you ever watch Black Mirror?
No, and
I haven't either. So
I think I might have seen a little bit of it. My roommate likes sci-fi, and so as a result of it, he'll watch lots of stuff. But I think also in his head, he mixes in werewolves and vampires and zombies all into that same kind of spectrum, because it all, for him, it very much blurs. He considers it all roughly the same. His reaction, his interest is roughly the same level of enthusiasm for all the same for these things. And he watches a lot of these things. So stuff, I could walk through a room and there's some of this stuff going on, and Black Mirror. But in the same respect, I don't know. Something about it, I was disinterested. I wasn't interested in it at all. On Netflix, there's something called OA, and I read the description of this. I go, oh, I know exactly what this is going to be. This is going to be a mind screw, and they're going to waste my time. Oh, I'm not going to even bother, right? Netflix has something called Travelers, which is exactly the same thing I was expecting. So what did I do? Is I have paid attention to it. I listened to it more than I looked at it, and it was interesting on premise idea, and it failed on completion of its execution. And I Minecrafted through it. So I remember parts of the thing with the visual of where I was Minecrafting. That's how I remember what I was doing during what I was doing. So I'd spent more time listening to it then, and it didn't grab my eyes and ears. It only grabbed my ears, and I was passively caring. It was more of a filler, right? And so there's lots of sci-fi like this, right? There's just a ton of it. There's CW had something called Forever. Would you call that sci-fi? Nah, not really. But it's sort of in that mystery that might relate to science, might not.
Would you call Stranger Things sci-fi?
No, I would consider that a mind screw. Its whole intention is to be nostalgic and to screw with your mind. Might be not exactly a psychological thriller. It's not to scare and screw you up all the time, but it's meant to leave you open-ended all the time. It's like, let me take my nostalgia and put a horror theme on it. Yes, that's it. That's what Stranger Things is. And what we're going to do is we're going to lay out all kinds of mystery, except we're really just wasting your time intentionally, right? And at the very end of it, we're going to... So this is where I call this the snap, crackle, and pop format. So snap starts out strong, snap. Then what they do is they kind of twist and contort it a little bit on the next episode. They twist it. They kind of shift your expectation a little bit, makes you uneasy. Now you think there's a mystery to be solved, and then pop, where they end you with something where you're hanging on. They've kind of blah 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 wasted your time down to the end of the last minute, and then oh my god, a reveal until next episode, right? And then the snap again. They take that, they give you the resolution you're looking for, they contort your expectation a little bit, and then they go and they leave you hanging. And so what they do is this is sort of like what Apple does with their TikTok approach,
or Marvel with their Netflix series.
Right, exactly. It's a snap, crackle, and pop. And I came to this conclusion on my own watching something called Stitchers, which is a TV show I like, and it's got things in it, and it's got like actors in it that I know from other things that I like. It even has a YouTuber now, which is interesting, and she's doing a good job. But to that point, it's like a content / comfort food kind of show with Stitchers.
Yeah.
Which is not surprising. But it does what all these shows do. It's a snap, crackle, pop format. And so here in the U.S. we have CW Network. And CW Network puts young, beautiful, teenager-looking, but they're actually 20 or 30-year-olds who just look really incredibly well and can act, right? They put it in that format, and they snap, crackle, and pop. Snap, crackle, and pop. Sometimes they snap, crackle, 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 pop. That's it. That's all they do.
It kind of reminds me of the that one episode of Stargate where they have one of the execs for one of those TV shows.
Oh yeah, that guy.
And they have like, I'm pregnant.
Yeah, right, exactly. So I mean, that's exactly the kinds of things that they do, and that's formulaic because these things are mass market, and this is what we get. So what it does is it gives us some good sci-fi. The 100 is a very imperfect series that's trying to do too many things, and every season it refines its footing, and then it might snap, crackle, pop me to death, but then it'll do something really interesting and beyond novel, and then it twists on a pretty good thing for a little bit. But the problem is it keeps twisting, and at some point, you're gonna lose me. That's where with the Marvel series, I've just decided, nope, I'm not even gonna watch The Defenders. It doesn't.
No, me neither.
I know Iron Fist was wasting my time. The Ozark, okay, it's not sci-fi, but like it's snap, crackle, popping in a horror theme, that kind of thing. So I lose my patience, right? Because it's clear that the production company or the company like Netflix or whoever who's putting it out there is just trying to engage me, but not satisfy me. Does that make sense?
That's kind of weird because Netflix needs your attention for longer, right? So they should be putting out really good stuff. And when I look at Defenders, I can't get through the first part, and that should be the snap, right? But when I look at Luke Cage, for example, one of the series, I just couldn't get through it. I got through Jessica Jones. I got through both seasons of Daredevil, but I couldn't get through it, and there might be a disconnect there because I don't understand the whole cultural thing behind it. But
I think
and the same thing with Iron Fist. I was like, at some point I just had it on in the background and was playing Minecraft.
Exactly,
it's just too boring.
When I start Minecrafting through it to get through it, because I'm already trying. I've already invested some time to figure it out. It's like, okay. When you snap, crackle, and pop and you have no levels of depth to it, this is where I run into problems, and that's when I start moonbasing or Minecrafting through it, then I know there's a problem. If it holds my attention, then it's got my attention, and it's engaging me, right, at multiple levels. Westworld. Westworld it's got rewatch value because there's a tremendous amount of surgical subtlety that's in this thing that can lead you into thoughts of deeper angles happening, more things than there are on the surface, but it's beyond surface. It's not just surface. It's beyond skin deep, right? It goes skin deep, and it goes farther in. And there's lots of subtle things. And as I was showing other people, as I was showing a friend of mine, going through things that I know what the end of the season looks like, going through in the beginning of it, knowing what the twists are, knowing where things go, and the many story parallels that are happening.
Yeah,
I could see lots of tiny little things littered right in the beginning of the first episode that also are attached to the last episode of the season, right?
Yeah.
Well done writing and thought, and obviously well executed from a production perspective.
Yeah. So talking about something else, right? We've got a few series that were not good, but there are good ones out there, like Westworld, like The Expanse, for example.
Sure, right. Yeah.
Now that is also probably because the source material was good, right? So if you have something like the 100, where it just drags you along, is that actually a book series, by the way?
I don't know what its origin is. It's got some actual sci-fi tenets, and then they're trying to do this. What do you call that? Desolate. There's a word for it.
Post-apocalyptic. Post-apocalyptic.
Post-apocalyptic. I don't really love those kind of movies or shows because all they are is steeped in how bad the world is and how dark the world is, and oh, by the way, let's put some horror, dark stuff in it, and then it becomes
now there's cannibals,
right? And and then it's nothing about anything, right? It's about milking the time, and ka-ching along the way, and that's what post-apocalyptic shows are for me. I don't think there's any really good candidates there. However, this one, I think to get to the good parts, you have to go through a lot of, not bad parts, a lot of wasted time to inform why the good parts are good. And I don't know where it comes from. I have a feeling it's probably fairly original, but I don't know. If I ever did any looking up on the information of it, I don't have any information about it.
If you look at, for example, The Expanse, which has they have like 6 books out, 7 books coming out. Like the source material, I know where it's going, right? And still, it surprises me at some points. And even though I know what's going to happen, the story is really good in the series. Right? They change some stuff around to make it more easy to shoot.
Right.
But they don't let you down. And that's something that we haven't seen from Sci-fi in quite a long time. Now, of course, Sci-fi itself is not actually producing the show. They are paying for some of it, apparently. But there's like a different production company behind it.
Right. So
actually makes it.
So Sci-fi, most of its, and this is where, for example, why Dark Matter got canceled. There's a lot of cases where a lot of the good shows that come out of Sci-fi are also like the main production company might be or is supported by or financed by the Canadian Broadcast Company. And so there are shows like the same production group that creates all the Stargate things, right? Stargate was their cash cow, and then they made several franchises from that. And then some of those individuals are involved in Dark Matter and Sanctuary, and there was a whole bunch of other things that were successful. Sanctuary is not a good example.
Yeah, definitely not.
Where they, low production cost, blah, 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 insert successful show, and it is half paid for by CBC and other half supplemented by Sci-Fi, and they both have rights to put it on their TV shows, but they don't own full rights or access to the material. They have to license it and blah, blah, blah. Dark Matter, example, on the by 2 individuals at least from the Stargate production side of things, whatever that main company is, and it got canceled primarily because even though it was doing well enough, even though ratings dropped but was still well in the zone, they canceled it because of the fact that Sci-Fi can't make as much profit as they want off of it compared to Killjoys, which is following general rules but is not nearly as the same level of quality, in my opinion, as a sci-fi show, right? It's all about the space and killing. Space and killing and wacky characters. Space and killing and wacky characters who are badass. And that's Killjoys, right? It doesn't have a lot of depth. It's mostly surface. I don't think there's any real deep construction to the world. I just think it's here's the characters. Looks similar to if you want a more badass than just killing and wacky extreme individuals compared to Dark Matter, Killjoys, right? And Sci-Fi owns all that content. That's their original.
Yeah, but if you look at, for example, Stargate, where all the aliens speak English. That show was not the most deep of shows. It did have a lot of lore, and it went on for a very long time. But I wouldn't have called it like a masterpiece.
No,
right?
I don't think so either. But I will give it some credit. There are, like I was talking about with Westworld, there are. One of the things is the writers got smart. What they did is they would lay out a bunch of options as they went forward, even in the first season, and they would go back and re-review their storylines. And then they would take elements from something that might have been just a minor reference or a minor side comment by a character, and then they would weave that into the universe going forward and then would build on that. So one of the things that's interesting about it is having watched it all, you can go back to another episode and watch a little bit of the first season and go, oh yeah, that's where this storyline happened out of that, and this season, and that season, and that season. They littered it throughout, and they turned it into something where most TV series just layer out a bunch of options and then never qualify them.
I'm just really upset we never got to see the furlings.
We didn't. Well, we kind of did. We kind of did in that joke episode. They look like Ewoks.
Really cheap-ass Ewoks.
Yeah. But, I mean, that was the point. That whole episode was to make fun of the things they never resolved.
Those are kind of the most enjoyable episodes where they actually make fun of themselves.
Right, and especially with Claudia Black in it, and that one episode where they did a Farscape thing. I mean, again, they understood why they were still around because of the people had invested in them, and they reinvested in the people who were their audience. And so the people producing it at the writer and the production level, I think did well by most of their audience. I mean, yes, you go back and you watch those first season stuff, and it's cringeworthy, just like early Next Generation stuff with Star Trek. It's cringeworthy. But you know where it ends up, and so, there's some value in knowing when you waited through the patience of watching it, they did well by your investment in them.
If you look at something like The Expanse, you're not going to see an episode like this, right? Because they're very serious.
No, they're very rooted in being serious, and I think, as you're saying, aside from consolidation, they're following the books.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I totally really like that, because I don't think I could see something like that for an episode in that universe like that.
Right. Never. I will say, the one thing when The Expanse started, it started to blur some lines with some other things in my head, which was when I was watching it. I felt like The Expanse was trying too hard to establish something, and they were trying too hard in their first season, first few episodes. But I waited through patiently to see if it was going to go somewhere better than just trying too hard to establish more real sci-fi versus being the opposite of not like everything else on TV that's considered sci-fi. And so I think what they did is they offered more of a rooted sense of things instead of trying too hard all the time. And that's more of the 100. that's more of your killjoys, right? It's that kind of thing. They're trying too hard to keep your eyes and ears on the TV while they insert a commercial in, right? And
you think that The Expanse is like that?
no, I'm saying it's not like that.
Okay.
And so I'm glad that they didn't just spend all their time trying to be not like those things, and that was the only novelty about it, right? How they were trying too hard. I mean, we never really got farther in past certain aspects of the show. I really should go back and watch season 1 because there's a lot of pieces of it that are awfully forgettable to me.
Yeah. So you saw till season 2, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know we got a third season coming, which here in the U.S. is not till next year. So
a new book coming out in December.
Yeah.
Already pre-ordered the audiobook.
The audiobook.
I'm so looking forward to this.
Yeah. I mean, so I don't know. I think there's I think we're getting a little bit more refresh happening. I'm happy to see a lot of fall off on the sci-fi fantasy. Sci-fi tried to dig on to zombies for the longest time. They're still doing it. The Sci-Fi Network, they tried Dominion. What was the other one they tried? They tried a couple of things where they were trying to take a much darker tone with like a CW format, put pretty people and dramatic pretty people and really super odd fantasy dramatic things that are like, pseudo-religious terms, dramatic thing. And
supernatural.
Right. Supernatural. Right. And legitimately that. Right. That's exactly the kind of crap that they were spitting out, and the ratings fell off. Yeah. Right.
And totally deserved.
Vanity and facade only works so long.
Yeah.
Right. You can have a deeper pocket. Now, with that said, I ran into Star Trek. It's a comfort food for me. I'm more of the Star Trek Next Generation, though I will say occasionally, like we're talking every 10 years, I might actually watch a full classic Star Trek episode just out of randomness and realize, it was pretty good, even in its hokey manner, considering its age.
Have you listened to the podcast that Adam Savage did with all these different sci-fi people?
No, I haven't.
You should go check it out. It's actually pretty good. There's some backstory in for Star Trek, for example. There's some
I think I think like I said, you go back and watch Next Generation. Really, that this first season is pretty bad.
Oh yes, it is.
But as you get towards the end of it, you invest a lot of time because what else was better that was on TV? Not a whole lot, and they had a pretty good class of actors involved who've gone on to do great things, or better things, or different things. And I mean, how many people who like Next Generation hate Data and Brent Spiner? I mean, Data was a great character, even though, it's just, there's lots of little things like that. And we all have our Spock characters somewhere littered throughout Star Trek. They do follow a formula. Everyone hated on Voyager. I enjoyed it. And then I rewatched it, and I enjoyed it. Still enjoyed it. Was Star Trek Enterprise perfect? No.
Definitely not.
Was it a lot different? Yes. Was it because of the height of Soul, because of the height of prequels? Yes. Was that a bad thing for it? No. The one thing I will respect is they didn't just use every plot convenience that everyone was comfortable with, which is, just beam them up. Just insert technology here and solve it in 2 seconds. Like, just say computer. Insert way to figure out really difficult situation. Oh, I failed. Computer iterated this way. I figured it out. The computer helped me. And again, those are our comfort, snacks that the show offered. And Enterprise refused to do that. And so I got to give them credit for that. I don't hate Enterprise. I just, I don't know where they were going with it, and that was my only mystery: is when were they going to align our expectations with what they were not doing?
I think that's what they're probably going to do with the new Discovery thing. They're going to go more towards,
Is this one is well, I don't really know. It looks like it's more like the modern universe compared to a prequel. It doesn't sound right in my head.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like
You said it too many times.
Yeah, universe.
No, this is actually set in the old one.
Oh, is it?
Not in the reboot universe.
Well, the one thing is they're really going for dark, and dark is in, and that's kind of where Expanse hits, and the 100 hits, and all the zombie fantasy werewolf twinkly vampires hit. It's all about dark now. It's dark. Defenders has got to be dark. I don't know if that's going to be a good component, or if that's going to be the way they're trying to market it to cash out.
Yeah.
So
now, we talked a lot about a different TV series, right? So you're not a book reader, from what I remember.
I don't because I'm constantly doing things which really requires my senses, and stopping to read, even though that's for a lot of people like meditation, I can't do that. I can't just utilize one or two things for a focused amount of time. I have to be doing more than one thing. And so for me, it's not that I read for utility and purpose. I don't read beyond it for pleasure. I don't know. I just don't think that was ever really rooted in me when I was young. However, with that, you're more of a book reader than I am for pleasure, right?
Actually, what I usually do is I use the audiobooks when I either go for a walk or whatever.
Right, and that was
when
the
I'm
part.
At home playing games or something, then I have an audiobook on usually, or podcast or something like that.
Right. And so that's where I was going to pick on you for that, is you're really not spending so much time reading as you're integrating it into streamlining it into something like an audiobook. And so for something like that, I'm sure that I could do that. But as much as I produce podcasts and I like podcasts, I have a pretty big podcast backlog for the things that I do like. And I don't always want a podcast in the background. Sometimes I want music. You know what I mean? So when those opportunities happen, I don't really have long commutes. My commutes are fairly short, maybe a half hour. And even then, it's not good enough to get into something, and then I got to go work, which means I got to disrupt whatever the thing I'm getting into. And then picking it up later is, more of an inertia problem for me.
I think it's also because the thing you do besides work is usually audio related when you do podcasts. And for me, I can't listen to an audiobook and edit a podcast at the same time, so I know that's a big problem.
No, you can't do that. You got to focus on one of them.
Yeah, but for me, when I do a lot of art on the side, so there's that for me.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So having an audiobook on my head, that's actually a good way to start focusing on art.
Right.
As for the things we were talking about, sci-fi, most of the books in my Audible collection is sci-fi, like 99% of it. Now, The Expanse finally became a series, so it was good. But there's plenty of stuff in here that actually could become a series, and I hope that at some point somebody picks up on that and just uses books as a basis, like book series as a basis for TV series, because one, they're very you already have the entire series plotted out for you, so you don't have to do any of the hard thinking, right? There's plenty of fans out there that want to see it happen. Like for example, with Game of Thrones, right? That they were popular before the series came out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Now there's lots of series on here, like for example, Expeditionary Force. I wouldn't think that Bobbyverse would work out, but something like Expeditionary Force would work. The Ember War thing might work because it's very military sci-fi. So that might it's a good. It's more of like a Battlestar Galactica theme. So that could be a good TV series. I wouldn't know if The Fold or 14 would be a good TV series. It's too much of a mystery of the week type thing for 14, and The Fold is a little bit too long of a story. But they could be one series as like one big universe for that kind of stuff. But the fandom for those are not that big, right? So I haven't actually heard anybody talking about Expeditionary Force outside of, well, the people that I know online that, also read books. So something that could actually work is Old Man's War. That's a very popular series, and it's I think it kind of hits home for some people about wars being fought over trivial matters of resources, and then people use as cannon fodder, right? That's what the stories usually is. So I think that Scalzi has some good series in there. He has a new series called Collapsing Empire. No, it's called The Interdependency. That's what the series is called. But The Collapsing Empire is book 1. And that's a very good story that could be turned into a good. There's a mystery there. Why are things why is the flow collapsing, right? So there's some intrigue between houses. There's kind of like the Game of Thrones theme there. So there's and the technology, the science is there, and there's some fantasy as well, right? So more of the royalty and that kind of stuff. So I think there's lots of books out here that could be turned into TV series. It just surprised me that there are not that many being picked up.
Right. So
The Expanse is doing good.
What it does is it takes a generation, or actually takes really 2 generations. So typically what ends up happening is it becomes like you as a teenager or you as a young person really fall in love with this audiobook, and then you seek for 10 years the option to get the rights to turn it into something, but you have to become the person that can be trusted with someone's material so everyone can be happy and make bank. And then it becomes the Hollywood thing. And then once you've substantiated yourself, a foothold into Hollywood and become a thing, then you can make it and turn it into a thing that becomes a TV show or a movie. And so this is a 30-year trial, a 20 to 30-year trial thing. And it takes people who start off listening to it, and it's an old thing, which doesn't meet any value in 10 years, which makes it easy for you to option and get a license for and blah, 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 and go through the Hollywood cycle. And then in 20 years, it's fresh and new wherever Hollywood is from your childhood to that point. And that's where things start showing up. Because you look at a lot of these things and you realize there was a book or there was an anime that's like 30 years old. Oh, no, that's not true. It's original. No, it's not original at all. It came from something old. And the reason is because the people that are spearheading the effort, the project, they start at an early point and it meant something to them, and they continue to further it, right? Until you're a J.J. Abrams or a Zack Snyder and you have your establishment, right? You can't just option things quickly.
Yeah, but the Expanse is not that old.
No. I mean, I'm just saying is that's why a lot of these things, when you realize that you're surprised that they haven't, I think time will tell, right? Yes, probably for some of them, not for all of them. I think that's really the fundamental thing is what we're going to see. Now, will anyone be listening to this 20 years from now and saying, oh, yeah, they were right? I don't know. But I can figure you could predict that. I mean, for example, Game of Thrones, not sci-fi. This is fantasy. And I think these where lines are blurring because some people say, oh, yeah, it's sci-fi. No.
Zombies are not sci-fi.
Yeah.
Even if they have glowing eyes.
It is sex and dragons. Right? Sex, violence, and dragons. And I like Game of Thrones. I'm not picking on it, but that's what it is, right? Instead of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, it's sex, violence, and dragons with zombies. Right.
Is that a new um, genre?
Well, no, that's exactly what the genre is today. Right? So when you have an opportunity to throw sex and violence in there to a more extreme level, that is when you have your Netflix, your HBO. That's when it's the pay subscription situation. They are free beyond the FCC rulings to do more. And so that's why they toss it in there. Yes, HBO, literally, somewhere in the first 2 episodes of every new season, one of the main characters or one of the most rooted characters in the theme of the season has to be naked. We see their butt. We see them full frontal. We see them topless. Like, that is a formula. It has to happen. I'm looking for it. It's not that I'm waiting for it. I expect it to show up in the formula. Westware. I keep saying Westware in my head. Westworld. Same thing, right? Same thing. Every once in a while we get to see someone naked, and they do that to keep the audience attention interested in multiple things. That's the sex component. Sometimes that's the sex / drug / rock and roll component, but that's part of the formula. It's not necessarily has to be written that way. It has to show up on screen that way. Otherwise, audience are. If you took the sex or any nudity out of Game of Thrones, does it make it less of a series? No. Will it have less of an audience? Yes. As sad as that is. Right?
But it kind of surprised me because in the books for The Expanse, the scenes on Eros, first of all, on Eros there's a lot more people. So there's like 1.5 million people on Eros in the books, and in the TV series it's 100,000. So there's changes there, and one of the changes that I was surprised by is that in the books they actually have people behaving like zombies and vomiting the brown goop all over the place. And in the TV series, there's just a couple of people with some crystals on their eyes. I mean, they could have gone, with the zombies. So I understand that they didn't do that because they didn't want to, make it too much of a zombie movie, zombie series. But, they didn't quite, stick to the books that good.
I will say with The Expanse, I'm bought in about 75% of the time. Has it iterated me into a little further? It hasn't. I think I started about 25%, that was about 50%, and now I'm about 75, 80%. So am I a little put off by some things? Yes, occasionally. But I'm willing enough to invest my disinterest component to see where it's going to go. And something like the 100, I clearly know what the formula is, but I had to vest into the first season for it to get to something interesting. And then it got to something interesting, and then it wasted my time for most of the season. And then it did a couple novel things, and then it wasted my time again, and into, more seasons. And then, of course, it ended on a pop, right? Yeah. So is it going to be, it's less sci-fi than when it started, right? So I've already spent a lot of time with it. And as much as I want to share those novel good things about it with my friends, they have to go through. They're just not going to be engaged. It's if they're not interested in the first component, the first episode, they're not going to be engaged in any of it. And so, you know what? That's like 30, 40 hours or something more than that, right? To waste your time on. I think it's 3 seasons. So. They have to waste like 60 hours of their time to see those novel components.
Watch it at twice speed.
Yeah.
Watch it at twice speed.
Or it's either 60. It's either like 30 hours or 60 hours. I don't know. I'd have to look it up. But so I think that's the problem with a lot of these sci-fis. They're not complete. They're partial, and sometimes the Hollywood component, the production component, this is not just unique to America. This is a problem everywhere else too, where they try to, rein in a whole bunch of crap for novelty's sake so that it feels like it's special. and that it's feel like it's doing something unique. Hey, are you going to be interested in this unique side thought that I had? Oh, good. Then I'm going to make lots of money off of just doing those things.
Well, that's kind of the thing I tried to point out. When you look at something like Game of Thrones, now they're beyond the books. The
Right.
series is different, right?
Yep.
With The Expanse, they have a big backlog of books that they're slowly working through, because like the first book is like the first the first and a half season of The Expanse is the first book, and then now we're starting to be in book 2.
Yeah.
Right? So we're about halfway through book 2. And they have a lot of stories to go through, and they're pumping them out really fast, but that's because there's 2 authors, and they write really fast. But they can also produce very good stuff because it's been thought out, it's been produced over a long time. It used to be a game idea that they had, and that I think that those type of stories that get put into series, I think that's they produce higher quality than something like, for example, The 100 or something where there's just production people doing production things and doing the show of the week.
Right. Building the formula. And that's the problem with CW is it's going to not do it's they've chosen some novel things, but then they run it through their filter, and it comes out in a formulaic format, right? Swap out vampires for something based on the Archie comics, but make it darker. It's really bad, but it's good. Okay, great. Riverdale. Swap out for that for make it an origin story about Spider-Man or Superman or the Arrow, right? That's the filter they run it through. Are they doing anything amazing? I mean, even Flash has its formula, but it's a superhero thing. It's nothing more than that. It's not really meant to do novel-rooted sci-fi. It's meant to be look pretty, feel pretty, and meet the satisfying the interest of people in comics.
Yeah.
So
formula,
with that said,
basically.
But with that said, I know what I'm getting into. I can read between the lines. I know where it's going to go. I know it's pretty predictable for me. And I still enjoy watching it because it's more of a comfort food than it is anything else. You know what I mean? It's not achieving anything incredibly amazing. The whole point of my previous rant, which was what I talked about Game of Thrones, was the novel points of there were 2. You had mentioned something that I already forgot, but Game of Thrones goes far back. He was writing on floppy disks, on DOS disks. The original stuff was on a word processor, on a 286, 386, right? That's when he started writing it. We're talking like in the 90s, right? We're not talking in last 10 years ago. Like, that's an example where it didn't get to this point without a lot of trouble and a lot of headache and a lot of effort on everyone's part to get it to this point so that it could be optioned or could exist. And, would have been better done in the 2000s compared to today. I think technology has a lot to do with it being executed pretty well today. Same thing goes back with Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is a lot older. I remember reading that orange book pre-90s probably.
Lord of the Rings is actually pretty old, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so, like, people would think, oh, no, that follows this 20, 30-year-old mark component again. So the reason Stranger Things looks like, seems like a Goonies environment, That's I bet you those kids like Goonies. I bet you if you listen to some interviews, I bet you they'll mention that, right? That's why. So it goes back to my theory or my assertion of a point, which is these things option forward over time because it inspires or interests people that eventually become the pioneers they need to be able to execute these things forward. So these things that you see in audiobook format today might actually make it faster if somebody who's established comes and makes it happen quicker.
Like, it kind of surprised me that something like Foundation, like Asimov, Right? Like that hasn't been turned into a series or movies. I just
Yeah,
don't understand why.
I think it's a when. It's not an if.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
I don't know. It's going to be
it
very
could
tough to
be
do that.
it could be a movie, it could be a series. I'm not even familiar with the story. I've read a lot of his stuff when I was younger.
So, Foundation is the story of what's the name of that guy? Well, there was a mathematician, a psychohistorian, and the idea was that he could calculate how much time it would take before the empire would fall, the galactic galaxy spanning empire would fall, and how long it would take to get back to an empire again, right? And to prevent it from taking too long, so prevent it from taking 10,000 years, you would shorten it to 1,000 years by seeding two new foundations, and that foundation would grow out to be the second empire, right? And that was the idea behind that.
Mm-hmm.
So you could have that entire story, all those books. There's so much backstory in that, and there's some really great concepts that you see in other TV shows and other books coming through, right? So I've read a couple of other ones before I read Foundation. I was like, hey, wait, I saw this they did this in another book. They totally took that out of that.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's good to see the source
There's
material. But it's also hooked up to the iRobot, the robot series too.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I was going to say iRobot. I was going to bring that up as a point, but yeah, I think this is this was probably a good deep topic because I think either of us can naturally rant about it. Certainly, I have little rants. Like I think there is the landscape of science fiction today is much more. What I can see, the pattern that I see is that whoever is the company that is financing it, right? Your Netflix and or your cable network channel or your local cable network or your local country, TV station channel network system, whoever is supporting something, what they're trying to feel out is what is marketable, right? So with the things like Comic-Con and comics and Marvel inciting their own content into a movie format where they have better control over it and executing really well, everyone wants to put their money there, right? That's the bet they want to gamble on. And they're clearly, Marvel is all locked up. Star Wars, they're rebooting it. Okay, that's good. Or it hasn't been incredibly bad. It hasn't been perfect, but it's been good versus terrible, right? It's,
Alan,
it goes with some
Jar
care.
Jar. Come on.
Well,
really?
Look, that's a different problem for a different reason. That was them trying too hard at a time they shouldn't have been trying at all. And then same thing is that's why we're getting another Star Trek, but that's also the same reason why we got movie reboots, right? Were they going for a reboot? No. Abrams said, no, you got to reboot it. And here's a reason why. Because here's all the problems we're going to have. And so by rebooting it, we take the risk of doing something newer and refreshing it and renewing it. And that's what Star Trek needs. It doesn't need to feel content and comfort food, convincing a new generation that, hey, take this drug. It's good for you. Like, you don't need that. You just need to reboot the holdings on this thing, the well-established world, and do something better or newer or different inside of it.
With all the different Star Trek series, eventually they got to solve things so easily because they had all this backstory with,
right?
Like, we solved it this time with this thing, and now they had to
right.
come up. Yeah, well, there's
right.
The amount of malfunction of computers in the Star Trek series eventually got so bad it looks like the only solution they needed at some point was like a virus scanner or something that would solve all the problems, because then they would no longer have the issues.
However, it was our comfort food, right? And it was the social political commentary on it was how our world could be better if we just stopped defeating each other and started working together and, doing better, right? I often say at places, even like conventions I worked at, people go, well, blah, blah, blah. I said, look, here's the deal. Could we do better? Yes. Did we do better? No. Should we do better? Yes. And we should actually do better instead of just noveling on the idea that we want to do better, but never actually executing on it. And when, things that we build at work, when someone says something about, and you're explaining, well, why'd you do this? I said, well, this is what we did for these reasons at that moment, or historically, or through the evolution of whatever reasons in the company. And this is why we did something, we pivoted completely different. And here's the value and the benefits for the future. And is the code perfect? No. Is it shameful or sloppy at times? Yes. Should we be ashamed of us writing that code at that time during that thing? Probably. Can we do better? Yes, and we should. And we will going forward. And so that's the same thing with these TV shows. And Star Trek definitely, whether it's obvious or not, has inspired a generation of younger people, even far back as the classic series, into creating technology components like the things that seem fairly obvious to us because we grew up with a Star Trek, right? Yeah. A Next Generation. Voice assistants. That seems obvious, right? Why? Because someone proposed a fantasy idea and then showed you how well it could execute. And now we're leading in that direction. They had to create a tremendous amount of things, a lot of technical obstacles they had to get past to even get there. We are leaning towards a direction of AI. It's happening more than not happening. And, like Voyager's gel pack memory modules, yeah. Right? We are leaning towards a biotechnological / computing and quantum stuff. We are heading in these directions. Why? Inspired thought by things like, hey, you walk up to a door, it opens for you to let you in the store. That was definitely inspired by cell phones. Inspired by... There's a tremendous amount of things that Star Trek has influenced, the very things we're all addicted to today. And, it's weird. You walk to a door and it doesn't open for you. What do you mean I have to use my arm and some muscles and some energy, right? And there are people that feel entitled to having this technology everywhere. So was Star Trek comfortable? Yes. Was it imperfect? Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
But we still desire it. And so some reboots are okay. And in Abrams, he did a good job, I think, a pretty good job rebooting Star Trek in such a way that it can be comfortable again after they've earned our comfort. Well, right?
If you look at Abrams' background, if you look at for example, Lost, mm-hmm. Fringe is a very good example of something he did that was very good. It spoke to the same thing, right? It had the X-Files component. It had the crazy scientist doing its crazy thing, right? Same thing with Star Trek. There is that same feeling to it. And right. The only difference is that they started with movies instead of doing a series in that same universe.
And it's because we've always had the comfort zone was the TV series, right? Yeah. It wasn't the movies. The movies are the novel things.
Just imagine what a TV series done by Abrams would have been like.
I mean, the thing is, he used to do TV series, and people all think he's all sci-fi and superhero. No, I mean, Felicity was made by Abrams, right? And so one of the things is that as an individual, he's a fan who thinks deeply about the impact of thinking through the premise and thinking about the universe that he's building, even if it's just a 30-minute TV show on CW. So I mean, that's what he does. He's brought together a group of people and has figured out how to think deeply but effectively about how to implement things. And that's the same thing that I'll give appeal about Whedon. Joss Whedon does the same thing.
Yeah,
right?
but,
He
but
thinks
those guys they can do something like this. They can write and make stories without there having to be source material. They basically are
right.
the source material writers, like for example for The Expanse and for um, Game of Thrones. Um, that ability to do that and then come up with an actual okay ending, right? That's very hard, and you do see that in a lot of series that get started, like for example the 100 and those CW series where they don't have a clear ending in mind. They don't
Right, or
don't
clear
start
intention.
they're not good writers, and you see that in the end result. And
I don't know if it's the writers as much as it is the machine. I think it's the machine. I think a CW makes it this way. I don't know. You might be right. The origin of it might be the problem with the writers, but I don't think that's the case.
Well,
because as imperfect as Stargate was, it does have some deep components to it that they eventually built on as they moved along.
yes,
right?
they did.
And you felt
but-
investment in the characters despite the universe.
But the same problem with Stargate, they didn't have an arc in mind. They didn't have, at the beginning, they didn't know that they were going to go somewhere.
Right.
They
exactly.
just said, concept Stargate, let's do this.
But,
right? And then they got Stargate Atlantis. That was okay. It was good. Eventually there was a good story going on.
Mm-hmm.
And they never actually got to resolve it really at all.
No, it really sucked.
Right.
Same thing with SGU.
Universe.
Yeah, when they started, they knew they were canceled. They did the things that the network wouldn't normally allow them to do, which then allowed them to do because they knew they were being canceled, and they did better things. And those are the things that same thing with Enterprise. They did some more than average novel things, and that's when those components were starting to get good. And the problem is the machine was in the way, not the production component of it.
Well, Stargate Universe is going to get finished in a comic book form. Same with Buffy.
Yeah, I really just want to see it.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's not not where I want to see it executed. You know what? In 20 years they'll make a movie out of it.
Well, they're redoing X-Files with like audiobooks now. That's interesting. I don't know if there's going to be another season of X-Files. They did a short season.
X-Files didn't hit the right things for me. So it never really followed through with much interest. I think that was a snap crackle pop thing too.
Yeah. I think it's really there's no end in sight. And with Fringe, even though there might not have been one at the beginning, or they did probably did. But there was a goal. There was we're going to solve this, and they put some stuff in the beginning that they're going to end on at the end. I'm not going to spoil Fringe for you if you haven't watched the end.
No, yeah, well, definitely not for people who are listening. I've watched it, but that's also a snap crackle pop format as well. I'm recommending a title change for the show, which should be for this show. It should be snap, crackle, pop, ! Space, sci-fi. Period.
1111111. Yeah. Okay. We'll think about that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we do have we have spent a lot of time talking about sci-fi.
Yeah,
I think
a lot.
It's a very deep topic, and I think both of us are very into the whole science fiction thing. But we got lots of other stuff still to share with you.
Yeah, I have a tremendous, is one of those weeks or couple of weeks, I found a lot of stuff. I mean, a lot of stuff. So we only got 5 for you this week. Or I do. I only have 5 for you this week. So do you know what paramotoring is?
Yeah, I shared one of his this guy's videos before.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah.
so I didn't, maybe that's how it came up through the algorithm or something. But anyhow, so this guy, this isn't his best video, but I've been watching him since the last couple of days of watching his stuff more. Really interesting. I didn't even know. This guy lives in Jersey somewhere. But paramotoring, it's a thing. It's a parachute and a big fan and a chair, and it's reasonably portable. And a little bit of gas, and away you go. You are flying. You're literally on a flying chair. And this kid, I mean, he's obviously in his 20s. Polymatic.link/AQ, and he just kind of flew from his car, from a park, got some McDonald's, and then flew back to his car, about 10 miles away. And as I continue to watch more of his videos, really pretty awesome, especially now when I finally decided to check out his Instagram. And there's some shots, and he's like, pulls out his phone out of his pocket and takes a picture from above. I would be freaked out. I don't think I could ever do that.
Dropped his phone before.
Well, I think the last video, which was like from a month or two ago, is something about where he had dropped. He said something about, I dropped one of my GoPros in Oshkosh, wherever that is. So
okay. So that was Polymatic.link/AQ.
Yes, indeed. Tucker Gott. I don't know. I've been enjoying it for what I've been watching it. Every once in a while, the rational fear of height kicks in and go, oh my God. But if I'm on an airplane, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, right? So
he got an FAA complaint lodged against him.
Twice, actually. Yeah. That was the second video I watched where they reported him again. Yeah. Of course, that was the cliffhanger, right? So I don't know, the first time was not really a problem. But the second time, which was the video I watched, who knows if he got really in trouble. So, but he seems for doing this for 4 years, he seems to be vested in knowing what he's doing, not just being like a jerk young kid. Right? That's not what his intention is. That's clear to me after watching more than a handful number of his videos. So,
okay, I got a cool video. I think everybody's already seen this, but Elon Musk shared a video, how not to land an orbital rocket booster. Polymatic.link/AJ. And I really like the Monty Python music.
Yeah. So... Oh, okay. So this one was sort of, I do subscribe to a couple like food related, how to make stuff.
Oh yeah.
They used to, early on, they would encourage me to actually go cook. Whether it was cooking these things. But this was, I thought was kind of interesting. Hand pulled cotton candy, where this guy makes, basically is using sort of how they do, if you ever heard of like pooled noodles, you go to your Chinatown and they have pooled noodles. Well, taking that same technique except with, basically a sugar substance and creating cotton candy from it. Yeah. It's interesting. I'm not sure that any of us are ever going to do it, but it does show you this channel's got other things going on, and that's kind of cool. Same thing with Tucker Gott. Like, I'd recommend as a subscribe, if you like that one video, which is not his best video, go look at another one and see if you like it. And that was polymatic.link/AR.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to try this, because I'm usually into trying new, sugar stuff.
I think the one thing that's apparent to me, but probably not apparent to most people when you watch it, is he's putting a lot of pressure on the goo to stretch it out and make it into noodles, and to keep stretching it and keep trying it. So, I mean, that's like if you were a baker, if you've ever made bread, you've done a lot of kneading, it does require a lot of pressure on, your fingers, and it's going to, you got to keep doing it. You can't just like give up halfway. Otherwise, you just toss it out. So
or just eat it.
Or well, I don't know if you want to eat just, like the first 4 of them, like that that's death to me.
One of those pucks, it would just kill you.
Yeah, too much sugar. One of those pucks would just kill me. It'd take your teeth out and your face and your skeleton once you bite into it. I'm sure of it.
Just instantly rot because of the sugar.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got a video about Social Security cards. Recently there was a little issue with Equifax doing bad things. Well, getting bad things done to him. So there is a reason why you shouldn't use your Social Security card number as a identifier. And this guy goes into it. Polymatic.link/AL.
Yes, indeed. It's a perfect system, and it's not like everyone else in the world hasn't figured that out. Rocket Jump, Freddie Wong, and another guy. Brandon. I can't think of his last name. But, the two of them created Rocket Jump. Freddie Wong made a lot of viral videos. I don't know. I would say at this point, a few years into YouTube, and does pretty good quality stuff, low budget, really funny things. He does usually star in them, but more as a character, not as himself. Anyhow, to the point, he's created Rocket Jump, right, instead of Freddie Wong's channel. And so he's got a group of people that do other things. They put like Dimension 404 on Hulu, for example. But to the point, they're starting to produce these little shorts again. And so this one was Hot Lava, is what I'm calling it. Polymatic.link/AS. I figured out what was going to go on, but I thought it was pretty good. I don't know. Did you watch it?
Yeah, I did. I was not really impressed. Well,
it's the fun of it. It's not how well they did special effects as much as it is, how they probably didn't spend a lot of money to produce that thing, but did a pretty good job.
As long as they were having fun, that's the most important part, right?
I enjoyed it. So
when I came across this, it was already revealed to be something other than it was supposed to be.
That's good.
Polymatic.link/AN. Go watch that one. Pause the podcast and then resume. And then watch Polymatic.link/AO for Westeros. Basically, people were really excited about this. It was going to be a spin-off of Game of Thrones, and it'd be set in modern day, and there'd be references to the old area and stuff like that. And really, people got really excited about it, and then it turned out to be a spoof.
Yeah, well, the first thing I watched is I was like, "What is this, John?" And I was like, "Yeah, that can't be real. No, HBO is not that. Look, I know." And again, insert formula expectations here. Huh? No, HBO would never do this. This can't be real.
So many people were excited about this. It was like,
and I was
like, yeah.
I was like, this can't be real. Then I shifted into, would I watch this? Maybe.
Oh. People were really bummed out and it turned out to be a spoof.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I knew right away was a spoof. But then like I said, I was sitting there just marveling on the idea. It would be bad, but would I watch it? And then I thought about Dominion and Sci-Fi Channel.
Yeah.
So this is someone from YouTube past for me. This guy, Ransom Riggs, knows, and actually I got to check his name. I think it ends with an M, but Ransom Riggs knows John Green. They're friends. They've always been friends since college. So that's how I know about Ransom Riggs, and I found his YouTube channel, and he's taken some stuff off. But these are just like two videos that he did that I really enjoy. And they're more in the realm of being short films. Yeah. They're more in the realm of him just doing what he does, like Casey Neistat does something. Casey Neistat does a somewhat movie-like vlog. This guy just has a thought. He writes out a story idea, whatever it is, and then he puts it in this little short film format. And polymatic.link/AU and AV. And this is how I heard about the Salton Sea. I didn't know about it otherwise.
I heard about it before. It was another something similar to this, but it was a different guy. But
yeah, other people have done sort of documentary things, but this is the person where I heard about it from. And I think he did a pretty good job of framing it. His sort of monotone-like thing, apparently this is the way he is in real life. Now, this guy has written a book, what is it, Pellegrines or for Peculiar Children? This is the author. This is his YouTube channel.
Okay.
I feel like you've mentioned this before, but and there are some trailers before he had the book, before he had the movie. He put together some trailer ideas. I think that was also selling the idea this could be a movie, so he created little short films on the idea of it, and then this became a thing.
What book are you talking about?
This is the something for Peculiar Children. That's the name of the book.
Huh.
Yeah, this is the author.
It sounds familiar, but
yeah, I just can't think of off the top of my head without doing some research like immediately this second, which I'm not going to do. But yeah, so that's the author. And so he used to have a couple more. He had some animation stuff. He had some other like short films on here that were really good. They're just missing on his YouTube channel. He took them off for whatever reason.
yeah.
But these are two that are fairly novel that are pretty good. And you're looking at one of these videos goes back as far as 2014. So this is a guy I wish would put out more videos like this more frequently. But he doesn't. So, yeah. Okay, enough for me on that.
But the way the thing you were talking about is Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children.
Yes, I just couldn't figure. I knew it started with a P. I just didn't know exactly what the vernacular was.
Yeah. So he wrote that book. Okay.
Yep.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So talking about somebody who can tell stories, Richard Feynman, another video about problem solving. So Polymatic./AP. It's a really inspirational type thing. You should go check it out. It's really good.
Yeah, Richard Feynman is. Anytime you see videos or their audio snippets where people just kind of made, videos out of them. Smart guy, right?
Yeah.
He's the only kind of guy you would interface if you were in the community of like Stephen Hawking, right? That kind of thing. Neil deGrasse Tyson. Until someone yanked him into public eye. Only the people that would know about these superstars or some equivalent of that or celebrities in your industry or community would, you'd only know about him if you know something about physics or, about really key professors that help influence the people that are influenced by Star Trek to go, create things, right? Feynman has a lot to do with a lot of things. So.
Polymatic./AP for that.
Yeah. All right, so we're moving on to Music Corner. We don't have any theme for this.
Should we get one?
It's okay. So I started out with, I only have one for you, M. Harris. This is another one of those case examples where she would do these things on Vine. And she never showed her face. Very rarely did she ever show her face. It was just like complete darkness or blackness, and then she would go near the piano or guitar or something, and she'd make a little tune. And so she's got this really sultry, awesome voice. She's not put out a lot of content. She's now since moved to LA. We're talking a few years later, recently. And so I guess maybe she's in the path of progressing to actually putting out more content. So she's put out a couple EPs. You can find those things on Amazon. I'm sure there might be even more on iTunes. Her YouTube channel is more of a desert. It really doesn't have much of anything. It has like a still picture and then maybe just a random demo that she was working on one night. Yeah. There are a couple, again, release production EPs. And I just linking to two videos, one most recent, little odd, and one old, again, still a little odd. But these are cases where you can at least see what she looks like. Again, because as you go through, if you want to hear more by her, go buy her stuff and or go look through her YouTube channel. She puts a lot of stuff out there. Polymatic.link for the first one, AW, that's the most recent, and Polymatic.link/AX. So it might not be your thing, but she has sort of a sultry voice, and she does actually, surprisingly, not knowing this was a theme. Her one album is she's a clear fan of sci-fi. In fact, I remember she put out a Periscope video one time where she was flipping her lid when she saw the new Star Wars trailers.
Okay.
She did a reaction video just blindly, and she's clearly at heart like a sci-fi fan. So at least I know that component about her, and not that seasons or flavors anything of my interest for her. I really do just like her voice, and even though her music's odd, a little odd, it's grown on me.
Okay. I've got something else, something different. Normally I'm not into rap or anything like that, but this is something I found a while back, and when I found out about it, then I realized that the creator of this was already dead.
Oh,
which
really?
is really, it was like really tragic, because the stuff he makes is actually pretty good. Nujabes, however you pronounce it, Feather is the name of the track. Polymatic..social. I kind of liked it. I'm not a fan of rap or anything like that, but this I liked, and his stuff on this album. I bought the album as soon as I found out about this, and then recently it just popped back into my list of tracks, and I was like, really like this.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out. I don't think, maybe I clicked on it and I just didn't get there.
Okay.
It's possible. I don't know, but I'll definitely check it out today.
Okay. So I think that's about it for today, right?
I think that's probably enough. I mean, at this point, we're into our episodes in the 20s. People are putting up with us, right? At this point, we're skipping through to the end.
Yeah, maybe to get to the links. The links are important.
Yeah, I really feel like I wish, I should just create an app where I just have public links of all the stuff that I find, because I have for Polymatic use, I could be sitting on this for the next 2 years. I have that many weird, awesome things. Actually, what ends up happening by the time I get to the 2 weeks, I'm like, I'll take the more saturated best of the group, and then I'll just, I'll archive the rest.
Yeah, so recently you had a lot of links in the.
Yeah,
I
found.
had a giant ton of links.
I found a lot.
I decided to at some point maybe I should just not put as many links in as I usually do.
Yeah, because I have so many, and a lot of them are going to age. But that's fine. That's cool. There's lots of good things. We didn't, I didn't share the video where Simone went to CERN. Did you watch that video?
Yeah, of course. Everybody,
things like that.
Everybody knows about Tested. This is very good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can find our socials at Polymatic.social. Alan, where can they find you on Twitter?
You can find me on Twitter, as you just said. CHAESS, that is my last name.
And you can find me on Twitter at WebDevy, WEBDEVVIE. For feedback, you can reach us at podcast@Polymatic.media. Our Twitter is The Polymatic. Our website is Polymatic.media. And I hope you tune in next time. The music in this episode was by Sei Uns. It was licensed under Creative Commons Attribution and found on the Free Music Archive. You can find these tracks at shortner.com/PRK.